Hi, I'm Natasha Sinyanovich, a public radio journalist, and this is Women Like Sex, a myth-busting podcast that examines the many medical, scientific, and social facts about female sexuality that were never, in fact, facts. Especially the very modern-day belief that women don't like sex as much as men do. I'll be speaking with experts, educators, friends, comedians, and listeners of all ages, backgrounds, and parts of the globe to flip the scripts on myths and misconceptions that have long been dictated by not women. Together, we'll replace so much inaccurate messaging with healthier, smarter, factual facts and get the sex ed we wished we'd gotten. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know we're peeling back those ideas about human sexuality that are based on junk science, pun very much intended, that are based on narrow, judgment-filled stereotypes that often teach that proper masculinity basically means being an emotionless sex doll who's mean to people they desire and who should treat human relationships as transactions or conquests. At least in the U.S., where the, quote, manhood, a loathsome word, or the motivations of straight men, for instance, may be questioned when they approach sex with tenderness, openness, respect. This week's guest is award-winning NPR and PBS journalist and host Khalil Ekulona, who has interviewed thousands of people, so it was fun to turn the proverbial microphone tables on him. I knew I had to invite him on when he told me once he thinks of sex as, well, the brilliant title of this episode. When we started talking, I quickly realized Khalil has spent a lifetime contemplating myths about sexuality and its intersections with intimacy, respect, race, capitalism. He shares these reflections, along with his experiences, his honor system, what his three sisters taught him about women. We also discuss our shared contempt for the so-called sexual marketplace, created by self-proclaimed dating and relationship gurus who teach humans how to be less human with one another, perpetuating mistrust, confusion, and harm, scripts which we very much need to flip, and which Khalil has been flipping in his life. Khalil was the inaugural host of This is Nashville, the daily live show on Nashville's NPR affiliate, where I used to work as a news anchor and reporter. We'd never overlapped, but I think we would have had a grand time working together. He's also worked for NPR, PBS, and NBC stations in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is a hip-hop musician, a podcaster, and so much more. Khalil and I literally earn our bread and butter talking to people, but I would urge everyone to seek out this kind of shame-free, judgment-free conversation, not just with partners, but with friends and acquaintances too. Because connection and communication, aren't they 90% of sex anyway? Last but not least, if you enjoy this fully independent, i.e. no-string budget podcast, please consider supporting it at the level of your choice at patreon.com/womenlikesex. Thank you. Let me start with kind of at the beginning of where you got your sex ed and what kind of sex ed did you receive growing up?
It was all over the place, you know. I grew up, my childhood was mostly during the 80s. I did get sex ed talks from my parents, particularly my dad. My mom's version of sex ed was like kind of how you treat a lady. She's got 3 girls and a boy. And she really wanted to make sure that her son was a gentleman and you treat a girl a certain way. And my dad, I remember it was my 12th birthday. Me and 4 of my friends, my dad's taking us to a Baltimore Orioles game. And we're driving and we're talking about our stuff. I didn't get silent. At a stoplight, my dad says, "So son, how's your sex life?" And we all started laughing. I'm 12. You know, it was nothing. And I asked him about that later. He said, "I just wanted to make you look cool in front of your friends." And I was like, "Well, thanks." It didn't work. So my dad, you know, sat me down and talked about, you know, how people reproduce. And if I had any questions about it, of course, you know, when you're 12, 13, you're a little bit shy and nervous. And I was. But you also get it from friends. In school, in high school, there's talks and rumors of things. And also we got it from television and movies. I was thinking about movies like Porky's, Revenge of the Nerds, 16 Candles, Can't Buy Me Love. These are the movies that we're being shown that are popular with us, that are giving us a particular idea about sex and the roles that males and females take in engaging in sex and things. A month before I go to college, my dad hands me a book. It talks about sex and racism in America. And it breaks down 4 relationships between white man, white woman, black man, black woman, white man, black woman, black man, white woman. He said, read this before you go to school because you're leaving the suburbs of Baltimore to go to school in North Carolina. You have to read this book. And I read about it, or we talked about it on the drive down there. And that began to open my mind about
Mm-hmm.
some of the roles that people will play for sex. And I had to learn a lot, and in conversations with people, and my approach to it was a lot different because I had so many sisters. I've got so many sisters and grew up in such a female centric household. It was hard to do growing up, but I'm very grateful for it now. But I remember watching, not necessarily, it didn't happen to my sisters, but my sisters' friends sitting on the sofa crying because some guy lied to them, said he loved them, said he cared for them more than he actually did in order to have sex with them and get in their pants.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm not going to lie to get laid.
Right.
I'm not going to make sex transactional. When I was in college, a lot of my friends would engage in relationships, sexual relationships, where they would meet a young lady who they hook up and hang out. Like, let's go to the mall. And she's buying that stuff. I'm like, is she buying you stuff because you guys just met? Do you really like each other? He's like, no, man, I'm laying the pipe well. So she's getting me these gifts. To me, always, I felt like sex, making love, moreover, is too powerful to be transactional. So it was hard for me. It's always been hard for me to kind of engage on that level.
Less booty call, more Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
That sums it up really well.
I spent 3.5 years of college looking for love rather than looking to get laid. Yeah, we're all young and dumb, and half of us were inebriated half the time. But I noticed that, college is a place where people go to experiment, to really engage in those activities. And I was still looking for love. And I'm like, okay, Khalil, you have had a sense of a certain level of honor. That's just who you are. It's taken me 52 years to be settled with that. There's times where I didn't act that way. When I first moved out to Los Angeles, again, still looking for love. So I was out in the party scene, but I wasn't engaging like everyone else, And so I just was like, forget it. And then I met a woman and we started dating. And then I really learned there's a difference between having sex, fucking, and making love. And I prefer to make love. It's invigorating not only for the body, but the spirit to do that. And that's something that we don't really promote or even talk about even more. I don't know the last time I've heard make love in popular lexicon.
It's often considered cheesy.
Yeah.
I had a different college experience. As I got to college and I was like, okay, I've noticed boys. And I had two long-term boyfriends in high school. But then when I got to college, I was not honorable in the sense that I had a boyfriend. He just didn't live in the same town. And I was just like, I want boys. Like, I want sex. But I realized then very early on, I was like, oh, I can do this and walk away. Like, if I love someone and I'm falling in love, then I actually need to wait. Let's build up to it so that we really want it. We'll wait weeks or a month or two, as opposed to I like someone and then that night.
Yeah.
But I've always had this, and I've talked about in another episode, like this kind of dual, this is just physical and this is all I want, or this is spiritual, to use your word. This is something far more. And it doesn't mean we're going to be together forever because maybe we won't fall fully in love.
Yeah.
Forever has never been in my lexicon. We're similar ages, and this is the longest relationship I've ever had in my life.
Congrats.
And I told him a few years back, I was like, before when I was I'd have like a 2 or 3 year relationship. I never really could think of a reason to stay. It's like, now I can't think of a reason to leave.
There you go. That is a really good place to be. So I'm definitely what you would call a late bloomer because of my honor system and stuff. And toward the end of my visit to LA, I began to get out a little bit more and I began to get noticed because, what caused me to be on here is I sent you this clip of Pre-Summer talking about in her 50s, she enjoys sex a lot more because she's comfortable with her body. You asked me if that was the same for men in our age group. And the guys I've talked to, they're more comfortable in their minds with having sex because of the performative aspect you put on it. And something that I attached to myself was words that I absolutely can't stand, the sexual marketplace and how that played out in Los Angeles at my time.
God, yeah.
Because I didn't have the Porsche or the big job. I'm living in a studio apartment in East Hollywood. I didn't have the accoutrement that make me attractive or a selective male. So half the time I wouldn't even try. Like if I did run into somebody, it was totally like meant to be, happenstance type of thing.
I've been listening to a podcast of these two. One's kind of a tech bro that used to teach tech bros how to date, and another, I don't even know if toxic's the word for it. It's its own kind of category. But when you say you weren't attractive to women? Like, do you think to a type of woman or to the type of woman that you were attracted to? Having done theater and then I was a film journalist, like I spent so much of my life around actors and directors and filmmakers and producers. A lot of times nobody had a dime between them, or a lira or a euro, depending on where I was living. But still, well, Italy's a different thing because they are much freer than we are.
Yeah.
But do you think it was a kind of one? Because I've never experienced money to be a serious factor for women or for men, whether it's hooking up or getting into relationships. I mean, of course I've heard it, but it was very, very rare among my friend group that somebody said that or thought that.
I wasn't really going to approach the woman who's walking down the street with a Chanel bag,
Right.
Because that dynamic works out there. There are some that may be dating a few people who are covering bills and things of that nature. It's LA, man. People have all sorts of relationships in the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah, they do.
It's also a weird place because on the other side of the Hollywood Hills, they don't film, the blockbuster movies. They film porn. So that dynamic is heavy in the city as well.
Right.
I just had a confidence thing. I just didn't think that I was desirable and attractive. The men I saw getting lots of attention from women, in some cases, had the resources to buy all the party favors, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Kind of suck up and absorb and buy the attention rather than emanate that from themselves. Now, again, I wasn't like solely a monk out there. When I did run into women who were like, oh, I see you. You're different. I like you. That's when we would engage.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the ambition in me to rise to a top of a particular scene.
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who's a television producer. So I was like, man, I would really love to meet somebody and to get down and to have sex, it'd be great. And he says, first you got to get the money, then you get the power, then the ladies come. And I was like, wow, that's just totally jacked up. It says nothing about who a person is, how you treat people. It's all of these outside indicators that determine whether or not you're attracted.
To plant that seed and to have it become ingrained in you, that's the transactional.
Yeah.
And it has deep roots of women couldn't work, so men had to be the providers. So women chose on the basis of,
who was going to be the better provider.
It wasn't that this is the first time ever in history, in society that we're partnering for love. But you also did make those choices. That still prevails is sad. That's part of the damage too, because it infantilizes women. It frustrates men. We're just operating off of these stereotypes often that have nothing to do with how we feel.
Yeah, it pushes us into these boxes. I remember when I'm hearing, was it years ago, Kevin Samuels passed away, who was kind of like a dating expert. He was one of the first ones I started hearing using the term sexual marketplace, the dating marketplace and stuff. I'm like, hold on, what are we doing? I don't necessarily get this, but seeing so many people talk about it, and I'm like, okay, let me tune into some of these conversations. What it's done is it's given us unrealistic expectations on what a person's true value is. I'm not talking about value in as far as our society and economic value. I'm talking about the entity of the spirit that is the human being.
The sexual marketplace has nothing to do with that. The sexual marketplace is, here are like 4 or 5 things that you need to hit, that you need to have to then be valuable on the marketplace.
Yep.
It's like these two guys. I mean, these two kind of dating, very heavy air quotes, experts. The name of this thing was like, what women really find attractive. It's like, all right, let me listen to 2 middle-aged white guys talk about what women really find attractive. And it has so much to do with insecurity, with their own insecurity.
Yeah. If this were truly an indication of what a good match of people are, according to the criteria of having all these things, why are relationships in such a shitty place and avenue? It goes to prove that it's not there, but it's temporary. It's self-aggrandizing in, you make a post and suddenly 10,000 people like it. Oh, wow, you're patting yourself on the back. It's a dopamine rush. And what began to worry me is I thought it was something that young people were in. And I'm like, young people are in this. They're going to be confused, but they'll get out of it. But when I began to see older people,
right,
I said, oh, this is really, it is metastasized and spread into something that is deeply, deeply affecting our culture. I don't know if any of the gentlemen you were talking about like hypergamy. It's
No.
this hypergamy, or people call it monkey branching. Like women will naturally, they want this guy. What was it? It was popular. He's 6'6", 6 figures, six
Oh,
pack abs, and over 6 feet tall. That type of thing. That's what they want. But they'll settle for some other guy. I had some friends who were in the red pill world, and I'm like, dude, that is not it. Let's talk about what it is, because that just breeds mistrust from both sides.
yeah.
It breeds confusion. It breeds an inability for us to absolutely communicate with someone you're interested in, particularly in a sexual manner. It makes sex so transactional. I was about to say a little bit earlier, I'm definitely a late bloomer in going into things, but in the second half of my adulthood, like not until in my mid 30s, did I really, 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 truly become active and just out there like that. I was a bartender. Not only was I a bartender, I was the hot bartender, or one of them, and I was the hot black bartender on top of that, which drew certain amounts of attention that, I'll be honest, took advantage
Well,
of.
it's a trifecta.
Even I engaged in that differently. Because I was older, I just remember sitting at 5 o'clock in the morning, closing the bar up, talking to some of my younger colleagues and hearing about the door guy who had to hide for half the shift because 4 women he was currently sleeping with at the same time were in the bar and none of them knew about each other. And I'm like, you might just want to tell them that you're doing this rather than hide from work. But I'm sure in theater, sometimes people can date each other, date their colleagues and those around them. But I really refrained from that. And this is something both of my parents did say, because as a male, they were like, if you put your penis into a woman, you are responsible, son. You're responsible for what happens. You're responsible if a child is going to come out of that. You are responsible if some sort of sexually transmitted infection or something comes out of that. You are responsible. So be mindful of who you do that with.
They taught you the emotional, physical implications of sex.
Yeah. And that was something that was very important for me. And I've had situations where it's like, you know what? We are close. We are very close, but let's not go there because I don't fully feel it.
Yeah.
It could damage a relationship or a friendship. I've been told several times, I like you too much as a friend to kind of go there with you when I did. And I understand it. Yeah, whatever, deal with the rejection. But then coming to understand, like, yeah, it's an important thing. And see, I couldn't just walk away after it was done. I just couldn't. I couldn't walk away after it was done. There was something, and it was a period of time where I wasn't even looking at the full woman that I was engaging with. It was a particular body part or some sort of style or something that I was like really into. And what would happen to me is like in the middle, I'll talk about men in our heads in the middle of the act. I'm like, Khalil, do you even really want to be doing this? But you're halfway there. Keep on going and perform. How many of us have been stuck in that performative space?
That is directly also tied to, like, you have the emotional part of it of, I'm doing this, I don't want to be here, I shouldn't be here. And then there is, on the woman's end, if you're talking men and women getting down, right? A man and woman having intercourse, then there's like,
Yeah.
well, what happens if I stop? If the guy stops, I get halfway through, and a friend of mine jokes, like, men have been stopping halfway through for millennia because of this idea that sex is just the intercourse, right? And that foreplay is this appetizer. And
Mhm.
and as one of the guests said, who studies the orgasm gap, like, if we overvalued female orgasm the way we do male orgasm, we would call intercourse post play. But
Yeah.
how much better the world would be, how much healthier we could be if we could just stop.
Yeah.
It may terribly hurt the other feel. If there was some guy that I liked who was just like, you know what, I gotta go, I would feel
Yeah.
like shit. But I don't feel good, because you can always, I think, also sense when someone doesn't want to be there, when someone
Yeah.
isn't fully engaged, and we like to trick ourselves, especially if we really like the person. He's just having
Mhm.
an off moment. She's having an off moment. It's something else. They're distracted about something else. Like, no, they like, you know what it's like when someone can't keep away from you and when someone can.
Yes. Yeah, that's the absolute truth. To stop in the middle of it is like, okay, break it down and speak, because some of it's weird. It's weird. It can be embarrassing for both parties. Particularly as a guy, you're not living up to whatever macho image you portrayed or
Right.
purported. Remember talking to a friend who ran into a woman out in Los Angeles, and they were engaging in intercourse, and he was taking the route of making love rather than just, as he said to me, thug fuck her, fuck her like a thug.
Hmm.
And she questioned him. What's wrong with you? from what he explained to me, I guess they hung out a couple times. She was explaining a little bit of the trauma she had from dating. And so when they do have intercourse and sex, he took a more gentle route given what she had told him. She didn't ask or didn't request that type of thing, but she questioned his manhood because he wasn't rough and primarily centered in on himself.
These are the stereotypes, right? This is the flip side of women and girls not liking sex too much, is that boys and men have to like it so much. It is directly tied to the predator versus prey model. Women just have to kind of sit back and be taken.
Yeah.
And that hurts everybody. And we can argue, and I will argue, that it hurts women more because it hurts in other ways.
Yeah.
But to then be called unmanly, like instead of just saying our sexuality is a nuanced thing that is not dependent on transaction. If it were, then all of the wealthy, beautiful celebrities would never be left. Nobody would ever leave them. Nobody would ever cheat on them.
That's right.
It sets women up also to expect these things. And while you were talking, I thought about a friend of mine who really liked a guy. He had like a 1-year-old and a partner. But he's like, oh, I'm not really happy. And then as soon as they have sex, she was like, oh, it was just great. He was just manly. And it was like, it was rough enough, but gentle enough. You know, it was the great man. And then right afterwards, because he's such a man, he was like, oh, this is it. I don't want anything more.
Yeah.
Who the fuck taught you that that was manly and masculine? I was like, that somebody just pulled the rug out from under you. He knows that you like him. It is obvious when I've been around the two of you. It's obvious how much you're enamored of him.
What are you doing to people? People are making themselves vulnerable to you.
Yeah.
It goes back to the decision I made when I was 14, 15. I am not going to lie to women in order to get laid. I am not going to do that because it's like for anybody, male, female, male, female, whatever, to share yourself with someone, to share your body with someone has to mean something. It's not just necessarily the physical parts and the nerve endings. That's great.
Yeah.
But it's got to mean something to me. It's got to be special because it's like you honor that. I remember in my bartending days and it's kind of casually hanging out dating one woman. You know, she would hit me up like, hey, what are you doing? Let's go have a drink and then do what we do. Great. And in the morning, I was never the type of person, if I was over at her place or she was over at my place or any of the women I was with, after the act is done, quote unquote, most people are putting their clothes on and leaving. I'm like, where are you going? First of all, let's hold each other because I might want to do this again in the morning because I think morning sex is the absolute best.
Right. It's like, I've already won the day.
Yeah, exactly. Let's sleep next to each other. And we did, and wake up. And I went around the corner to get us coffee and a couple breakfast burritos, and we're sitting on my porch. So I was like, what do you want to listen to? She's like, put us some Frank Sinatra, playing Frank Sinatra on the speakerphone. We're eating, having coffee, a beautiful spring day. And she looks at me and she's happy. She smiles. And then she gets this such crying. And I'm like, what is wrong? What is happening? What's wrong? And she said, Khalil, you can't do this. I'm like, what do you mean? She says, this is boyfriend stuff. And I said, whoa, hold on, what? She's like, this is what boyfriends do. And we're just kind of hanging out and hooking up. I said, I get what you're saying against that less booty call, more Ella Fitzgerald. I'm like, to me, this is what lovers do. Not full on, I'm in love with you, you're my soulmate, we've matched for life. But I love you enough that I have shared myself with you. You have shared yourself with me. I love you as a human in that respect, and I'm going to respect you. So why wouldn't I treat you sweet and do nice things like this? I have a level of care for you that's developed more than the superficial. So if you are in need of something, feel comfortable and free to reach out to me to help you with that.
I fully believe in courtship and romance, even in the casual. It took me a while. Like when I was younger, I wouldn't necessarily lie that I was seeing people. I mean, I lied to my boyfriend when I'm talking about like first year of college. And I didn't grow up thinking that sex was shameful or that my sexuality was shameful, but I did kind of know, in air quotes, that I shouldn't be having a lot of sex because I'm a woman. And so I just wasn't honest about it. And I got to a point where I was like, you know what, instead of, I'm not necessarily going to stop if this is what I like. I mean, when I lived, especially in my 20s and stuff, and when I moved to Italy, and it was just so much easier to meet people. I moved to New York and my dating life plummeted from Rome to New York. I mean, we're talking just a few months, and then Nashville even more so. Like it was the only time I had a job where tens of thousands of people listened to me every day and I couldn't get a date.
Yes.
I could like walk into a coffee shop and meet somebody and, be having dinner with him in a couple of nights in Rome. Whereas I could walk into the same coffee shop where people are like, oh, can I have your autograph?
Yeah.
You got it exponentially more because they had much more contact in terms of listening to you. And then getting ghosted by the same men who are like, oh my God, I listen to you every day.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. And I was also very cautious because of the environment that we're in.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think sex is any more weaponized now than it has been throughout human history.
I think it's less so because women have more agency.
Yeah.
It's much more of a weapon when the laws don't even say that you can be sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
I'm always the one that brings the mood.
Oh, you keeping it real. And that's very important to recognize with your friend. And the guy was like, hey, after it was done, hey, this is all I want. I would advise people to say that up front, what you're up to. So you're clear, and it's only a matter of respect to yourselves and to others. But you repeatedly have to state where you are at, particularly if you're having sex with someone casually.
Because things change. I've gone into situations where I'm like, this is just casual. And I'm like, oh, wow. I want to keep seeing this person. Okay, there's something here.
You got to be honest and you got to say it, and you repeatedly have to have those discussions. And so sometimes that can lead to what are we, or what do people call it, the situationships and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it creates. Like I've had relationships that have been a couple years long that have been wonderful. I've had that. I've had 72 hours at a conference in San Francisco. That was absolutely fantastic. I finally got why Tony Bennett sings I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Wow. That was truly, truly magical. And I recall moments like that when, particularly in society, in terms of romance, dating, sex and love and coupling, makes one depressed, makes one callous towards it and embittered, and jaded. I was like, whenever that started to creep in, I had to think about those moments. I'm like, no, they exist out there. You've read about them, you've seen movies about them, you've heard songs about them, but you've also experienced it too. And it doesn't exist just once. There are 8 billion people on the planet. 5 billion women on the planet. Trust, you are okay.
Those are the things to hold on to, not the sexual marketplace value meters, not the rules, which I think, like, I know, the women who are like, we have to follow the rules. And I hated that shit. It's like, I will not behave like the traditional, like the trad woman, because that's not who I am. I don't need the flowers. I do not celebrate Valentine's Day. I can't stand to celebrate Valentine's Day. It's like, let's be romantic every other day.
Yeah.
Not the day that you're supposed to be making, that a bunch of people decided to make money off of it.
Yes.
But those people who think that way tend, in my experience, have been the most miserable. The absolutely most miserable, because they're trying to follow these rules that, like, it doesn't. I can say physically what my type is, and then somebody else walks into the room and I'm like, oh, hello.
Yeah.
They're an entirely different, again, type.
Yeah.
You look at somebody and you're like, I know you and you know me. And those are not things that you can quantify and qualify, and they're not repeatable. You can't just say, oh, because, okay, so this guy was like this. And so if I find another person like this, you become like Woody Allen and Annie Hall trying to like repeat dates.
Yes. I call that mindset the vodka, soda, splash of crayon order, the very basic order. As a bartender, this is what you're getting to drink. I know what to expect from you all. Because people don't know what to do. So they're going to go with whatever's in style. Whatever everyone else is doing, whatever I'm told to do, let me do, because I don't know how to listen to myself.
Yeah. Because everybody else must be right. Society must be right. And I don't know how much of I was just born with and how much my parents instilled in me. It was like, once I started, especially when it comes to sexuality, but so much in life, when I started realizing, oh, I like sex. Women like sex just as much as men do. I have a lot of girlfriends who are like, men can't keep up with us. I mean, this project really stemmed from, I was like, well, partly because women don't have a refractory period, but it was also like women I knew who were like, he only wants to have sex once a week, right? Like they were constant conversations, or maybe just once a night, and she could and wanted more. When I started coming up against these things, they're like, oh, these are myths. Call them myths, call them bullshit, call them social constructs, call them whatever. It was like, that's wrong, not me. Yeah. I'm not wrong, because I have no other compass to follow, to truly follow but my own. And one thing I've noticed in life, like if I live against myself, if I go, like if I'm 180 degrees from what I'm supposed to be doing in a job, in a relationship, I stop to function. Yeah. I feel like a zombie walking through the world. And it's like, nothing of this makes me happy. So I learned early on, I can't do this. Can't be in a relationship because I'm hurting myself. I mean, there's no perfect thing, but there's a point at which you're like, okay, if it's more sacrifice than compromise, if it's more like bending myself, like the little kid's toy, if I'm the cross and I'm trying to get into the triangle shape.
It's not going to work. And you said something about women kind of being ready for more than one round a night. With guys, it's this idea of if you didn't put her to sleep, you didn't do a good job.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But you said something earlier about, and it's true, us being so focused on the male orgasm as a part of sex or vaginal intercourse, right?
Right.
That I have run into difficulty with that because a couple things. One, when I was younger, hearing that there was a song like "They Don't Want No Short Man," like the 1 minute man was really disparaged. I remember watching Golden Girls episodes and watching my mom and her girlfriends laugh about that type of stuff. And when I figured out what it was, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be one of those dudes.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm also thinking about what my parents told me. You have to be very careful about who you stick your penis in, son, because no matter how much contraception you use, you could still get someone pregnant.
Right.
So that made me a little bit leery. And also my quest and a personal desire, maybe make myself feel good to make sure that my partner, that she really enjoyed herself, that however we got to find you to orgasm, let's do it as many times as possible. And so that I put this pressure on myself, but I limited myself in not being able to, or not being free with myself to orgasm
Mm-hmm.
or to come this way. Because I think male orgasm and coming are two different things. Coming is the releasing of the fluid, is the releasing of sperm from the testicles and everything else. An orgasm is entirely different because you can feel an entire body orgasm.
The actual chart that sexologists would use that I've seen for sex is stimulation plus ejaculation.
Wow.
And that is so androcentric. That is so penis-centric.
Yeah.
What about if, from a young age, if we taught kids that cisgender females have the only human organ known to exist solely for pleasure? What if we put that into people's minds, right? Oh, okay, so women are built, right? Females are built for sex. If we could just start teaching kids actual human sexuality.
Yeah.
Honestly and openly, and away from these models that we're still working with that have to do with what, a bunch of dudes from 2,000 years ago decided in the West, right? Because we're still steeped in biblical knowledge.
Yes, particularly in our country and our society at the moment. You said, reminded me of a couple things. Once I gave a high school graduation address in 2013. I had a little line about sex, and they were like, "Oh, we won't put it in there." I was like, "Okay, I won't put it in there." But knowing me, I was like, "The mic is hot. What are you gonna do?" And so I said the line. I was just giving them advice on things. Yeah, you guys are. I've known you since you were freshmen. You were going out into the world, and I talked about sex. So I was like, for those of you who haven't, you're probably gonna like it, and you're gonna want to do it more. You should be responsible with that. And I'm like, you're gonna like it for the most part because how do you think you got here? And all the parents, I had grandmothers coming up to me years later at a grocery store saying, "You're the guy who said that. I'm so glad you said that. I was trying to get that through to my granddaughter or my grandson." People have their look what they're comfortable with as far as sexual exploits, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily want to poo-poo and say what for somebody else may not necessarily be for me. What I'm just asking for is maybe we can act responsibly within that. Again, I think we cover up a lot of things for a lot of reasons. Safety is very, very real. I've had a lot of women kind of reach out to me in vulnerable places, either in the middle of the day or absolutely in the middle of the night. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
In Albuquerque, a lot. And they felt safe. They would say this at my going away party. They said, "You were one man, probably the only man we know, who we could come to in a vulnerable position, and we felt safe knowing that you wouldn't try to take advantage of it." And I felt good about that. Sometimes those situations did lead to sexual intimacy, and sometimes they did.
The difference there is the exploiting of it.
Yes.
I've had male friends that I've come to in times of need, or, I'm breaking up with someone. I don't want you to put the moves on me. The Italians have a phrase, chiodo schiaccia chiodo, which is a nail squashes another nail. To get over one nail, you're just going to nail something in over that, right? It's like, if this is what I'm here for, I'll tell you. If not, I'm just sharing. The hell makes you think that I want your penis out right now?
That's kind of wild, and that goes to it too. In the communication, not all of us are, I know I certainly wasn't my entire life, bold enough to say what we want. and what's on our minds. I know a young lady who was dating two different guys. One guy was kind of a machismo asshole, and another one was a very sensitive poet type, you know? Two very different types of sex she was having. And she felt torn. And I'm like, well, what is it about the machismo guy that you keep going back to for some reason? Okay, what is it about the sensitive guy? And so I said, in a perfect world, the sensitive guy would essentially fuck you like the machismo guy. And she's like, yeah, that would be great if that were, but I don't necessarily think it's there. I'm like, maybe you could talk to the sensitive guy about it, or just say you like these two different types of treatment and it's okay. You are not a bad person.
Right.
It's coming to accept it because we have so much hidden and public shame around these things. It prevents us from being absolutely honest and saying what we desire, what we want, or even what we're curious about.
Yeah. Again, they could be like 180 degrees from what you think you want
Yeah.
and like, or what you do like. I mean, like, we all have physical attributes that we like. We all have visual stimula that we're attracted to, but then really liking someone goes so much deeper. And or it could just be like a physical thing. Like, that's, for me, it was just like, oh, here's a person, there is something about their body that speaks to my body.
It's something, because I think about like the lack of romance out there. And I was thinking about songs before this interview, and the simple song that you and I have heard and other people may have heard, Donka Shane, the Wayne Newton hit.
That is the last thing that I expected you to say. Like,
think about it. Donka Shane, save those lies, baby, don't explain. Donka Shane ain't thank you. He's saying thank you.
yeah.
We had a tryst. We had an affair that could end up messy because you weren't necessarily forthright. Save the lies. You don't have to explain. I recall Central Park and Fall. I recall the romantic moments. I recall the special things about our 3-week, 3-month, 3-day, however long tryst you had.
Right.
And I'm like, yes, they didn't end up forever, but that's romantic. That's endearing. But I remember in college playing the song Dr. Dre on the Chronic album, Bitches Ain't Shit But Hoes and Tricks, you know? Because that's what, we were playing it. We're also 19, 20, you listening to doing things that most dumbass 19, 20-year-olds are doing, and like listening to that song. And like songs like that make it cautionary. Like I'm not going to diss Sabrina Carpenter and whatnot, but I know there's been a lot of talk about her album titles and her music and Man-Child, and there's been a lot of sociological breakdown about the lyrics, and I've read some of the articles and whatnot, and it's like, yeah, she may sound like she's empowered, but she doesn't sound like she's having fun.
I don't know enough about her music. I don't know her music well enough.
And the imagery that it's posting and putting up there. Again, the whole dominant submissive thing is where we get caught up in. Like, all men are supposed to be dominant, women, like you were saying earlier, supposed to be demure and absolutely submissive, where that doesn't play out for everyone in that particular form. If that does, and people match up and they're on that and that's true to them, congratulations, be with it. But if you can be true to yourself,
Yeah.
so much, and also be true to yourself within the contradictions.
Yeah, understand where those contradictions are. But when you made me think of empowerment, women are told that they are also empowered if they show off their body. And you want to look sexy, right? You want to feel sexy, you want to look sexy, but that sexiness is not typically dictated, pun intended, like very much like by women, right? It is dictated. And I saw a documentary called The Male Gaze, pulling apart how women and men are presented in films. And before that, one of the women who I know was like, stood up and said, there's going to be some of your, like, to all of us. And so there was a Q&A afterwards. There are going to be some of your favorite films in here. Step back, don't take it so personally. And there were movies where I was like, oh shit, even though I wrote about that kind of stuff, right? I was pissed. I mean, you talked about 16 Candles. Even as a kid, I was just like, 16 Candles. Like, there's a scene in which the hot guy, whatever his name is, that Molly Ringwald ends up with, tells Anthony Michael Hall, oh, my girlfriend, like the hot girl, she's passed out drunk, go for it. I was like, that's a crime.
Yep. And thinking about movies with the male gaze, I remember it's like damn near every Michael Bay Transformers movie has some shot of some girl who's supposed to be ambiguously between 16 and a half and 18. They obviously said she's a high school senior, and they're totally giving her the Lolita treatment.
Yeah.
But that has been something our society has been on. I remember when Britney Spears became a hit. Britney Spears, Oops, I Did It Again music video. She's dressed like a Catholic schoolgirl.
Yeah.
Talking about that with people, because I was living in LA talking about that. And a friend of mine had gone to the concert and he said it was a bunch of fathers and their 13-year-old daughters. Yeah,
There are plenty of concerts that parents let their 13-year-olds go to without attending.
exactly. But dad showed up.
Yeah.
Not trying to be puritanical or wash anything clean. It's like if we can recognize where we're at, then we can then foresee the contradiction. But it's because it became so murky, so confused, in some cases so commercialized, in some cases so contrived.
Commercialized, and there are people that are making money off of that, but they're making money off of that because basically there are perverts who like, I mean, I know that's a loaded word, but it really,
Yeah.
when you see that, you have to think about what's behind that. You have to understand what's behind that. She got a lot of crap for that, Britney Spears too. Like I remember that where he was like, "Well, do you want to be a role model?" I remember I watched it again. The what's her name, Diane Sawyer interview where she's like, "Parents say that you're not a good role model for their kids," and she was like, "I'm not their role model. Parents should be role modeling."
I'm actually working on a song that make hip hop music. That's why I was out in LA all those years to make hip hop music. I got into teaching and all this other stuff as a result of being out there. And I'm working on a song right now. The title is "The Dirty Old Man and the Only Things." I like art to imitate life a lot. Life can imitate art, but I like art to imitate life and just taking from my own experiences, looking at society of what's happened definitely over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Let's tell a little story just about where society is. And one of the last lines in it is, you can wrath if you wanna, you can laugh if you wanna. I'm just talking about the times. Recognizing where we're at. I don't necessarily think that, again, any one person has all of the rules or knows exactly what we should be doing. There's a lot of room for us to create pitfalls for ourselves. There's a lot of room for us to create outs for ourselves, to absolve or abdicate taking any sort of responsibility as far as our own actions are concerned. And it's and societal responsibilities is too. I think it's important, like for a show like this and what you're doing. Like when I first saw that you were launching it, I was like, I'm gonna listen. I like this. It's something important to listen to, just to understand a little bit more, you know? And therefore, if I can understand where I'm coming from in this situation, but can communicate that, maybe someone else can. Maybe the next woman I engage in dating or having sex with is at a place where she could communicate and talk.
The way you talk about it, I often frame with students, we are like when I'm teaching journalism, we need to be time travelers. You need to understand that we are the products of the stories that we're born into. So if you want to be a good journalist, you need to question the stories that you think are facts, right? That you've learned as facts, as unalterable. Because when we look back at history, history is just us, right? It's this conversation 500 or 1,000 years ago and the context in which these conversations can happen.
Yeah.
Any conversation. And so we look back and we're horrified at what we thought, or we think it's silly. To understand the times, you have to understand the stories.
Yes.
I want to have that 30,000 foot view of how did we get here? And also having three cultures really, because I was born in the Balkans. I was born in what used to be Yugoslavia, grew up in the States, and then lived in Italy for 16 years. The cultures in the whole span of the globe are not that different, but still very different enough in some ways where I'm like, oh, the way that one country deals with certain laws or, like has legalized or illegalized certain things, and another country has done the opposite. Like, oh, okay, these are just the stories. These are because that group of people, maybe millions of them, grew up with these stories.
Yeah.
I want to replace the harmful stories. I want to replace what I keep calling the rectum derived. The things that are really based on nothing other than people's opinions.
Yeah.
Sexism and racism, right? The intersection of sexuality and racism, the intersexuality of porn and racism, the stories that we have told ourselves in this country about Black and white people. We haven't told enough stories, but they're better stories than they were 100 years ago or 150 years ago or 400 years ago. I think this country, the reckoning that this country refuses to have.
Tends to run from. And go back to that book my dad gave me before I went to college. I read it. And I'm reading particularly reading the section where it talks about Black man, white woman. Remember, I was in second, third grade. I came home a little bit distraught, and my folks are like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I think I like Brandy Murphy, or I forget her last name. She was a white girl, little strawberry blonde, freckles." And I was like, but she's white. And my parents said, we don't care. You can like whoever you like, as long as they're good and like you back and they're nice people. We don't care. And so since then, I and my siblings have always been open to dating, spending time,
Yeah, yeah.
not only just friendship, but romantic wise with the human beings that resonate, vibrate with us. That's what we've done. But in this section, it talked about the sexual relationship between Black men and white women. And they were going back to, it was right after emancipation, when some scholars were trying to document the experience of formerly enslaved men, particularly. And they talked to the men who were accused of some form of sexual assault or rape against white women, who were either locked up in jail and things. And they all had a very similar story to how it broke down. They're usually tending to whatever they were. They were called in by the mistress of the house, the madam of the house, to a small room. And it was asking a line of questions. Do you think I'm nice? Do you like me? Do you think I'm pretty and stuff? And that those line of questioning would eventually lead to a proposition of some sort. It was either both parties wanted to do it and they did. It was either I'm not know about this because they were very aware of the consequences of being caught and it was being threatened. You do this or I'll tell them you tried.
Yeah.
Serious issue. And I remember talking to my dad about that on the drive down to college. And I was just kind of befuddled, like, wow. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of Baltimore. And then comes my junior year of college. And I'm in a class, a young lady, we were study partners, sit up in her dorm room and would study stuff. And then one day in her dorm room, after about 2 months, that line of questioning started. Do you think I'm nice? Do you think I'm pretty and all this stuff? Now, there wasn't a proposition because the situation obviously was very different. And that led us to spending time to hang out and whatnot. But as this was happening, I remembered that book. And I was like, wow. Which caused me to do a little bit more research. I didn't really like dive into it, but hearing the stories of how enslaved people were made to be, in some cases, sexual pets.
Yeah.
And how that's led to the sexual stigmas and the arousal points of it. And then when I worked at a bar in Albuquerque, the place I worked was a private club, and they would have once a month a fetish life nights. And I was the bartender who worked it because I was the most senior bartender. So I'm hearing all these stories about different sexual fetishes and how people got into this. I was hearing a story from a couple who engaged in cuckolding. It was like group cuckolding and everything else. And one couple that they were in were extremely racist, but their kink was watching the wife and the husband get down with people of different races. This is after living in Los Angeles. I really the LA Weekly is like the Nashville scene or like
Yeah.
the Village Voice. I love the LA Weekly because they used to really produce once a quarter. They produce very well written, in depth, 19-20 page stories on the pornography industry, and you got to see it there how certain things played out, how certain white starlets, they would tend to start doing interracial porn at the end of their careers to keep their careers floated because of what the stigma was like if they engaged in it back then. I began to see it. And, because I was really thinking my relationship with porn has been an interesting thing. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, the pornography industry,
Jesus.
as
Jesus Christ.
jacked up as it is, was literally built on the backs of white women.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting white women into all of this stuff that literally really gave the foundations for it.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
I'm talking about the porn industry that kind of takes off after the John Holmes Deep Throat 1970s into theater type stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We kind of had like gonzo type of stuff going on, which that's not for me, so to speak. But then it really, really began to blow up. And I remember, I think the first pornography I ever saw was like 9. Somebody's house, their uncle was playing some stuff. Like, come on, boys, watch this. Yo, what's this? And I'm like, okay, there it is. Because it was then, because our idea of having sex was, we didn't know. We were 9 years old. We didn't know. It's like you laid on top of the woman and humping, you kind of rolled your stomach. That's what we thought it was. I know it's like innocent. And then we see that. And it was like, oh, that's what sex is. And then seeing porn films, friends find their parents' stash, you're like, I can't believe Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy have a crazy stash, and you're finding sex toys, and they're like the most plain looking, nice couple.
My dad had, I don't know how much my mom, I actually haven't read her, I asked her, had like Playboy and Penthouse. Friends would come over and sit in my closet, and we would read them when we were like 7, 8 years old. They also gave me like healthy books on sexuality and what, but it wasn't taboo.
It wasn't taboo. And I just recall that and just kind of looking at and living out there in LA and seeing the porn industry like really, really destroy people the way it is now. You know, really, truly destroying people, but then seeing the racism and it, seeing the deep, deep seated misogyny and violence. And it was at times it just made it. How can I watch this? I was just talking to a friend not too long ago. He's like, I can't watch it anymore, Khalil. And I
Yeah.
was like, I feel you, man. I can't either.
What little I've watched, I can't because I just like I everything that's behind it and around it. But when you talk about like the kink of having a white person having sex with black people, it's only a kink if you are thinking about historical roles. Otherwise, it's just two people having sex.
Yeah.
You made me think of a friend of mine who, I don't know if you listened to episode 4, who's black, she's like, there's at least one guy out there who asked her if they could role play master an enslaved person.
I didn't get to that part in the conversation, but wow, that's a lot. But that's the thing.
And she's just like, are you fucking crazy? Like, all I'm trying to do is not think about that. As people living in
Yes.
the 21st century, I don't want to think about that.
Yes.
And you want to play that out?
How many times in me, dating women of different races or ethnicities, the idea of race to me doesn't exist.
The word race is racist because it's based on the idea of different human races. What you're
Yes.
talking about is bigotry and prejudice. And if you're what we call racism is melanin levels.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I dated women of considerably lower melanin levels than I had, that was something in the back of my mind. Do you like me, or am I inexperienced for you? I have friends, and at one time maybe was a little bit myself, I'll be honest, but I also have friends who I call butterfly collectors, the old notches on the belt or the bedpost type of thing. Am I that for you, sweetheart? And like really getting down and asking questions like, am I just an experience for you? Or are you into who Khalil happens to be? I remember working again as a bartender and just having women in whatever state of soberness or inebriation just say, I just love black men. I just love black men. And I'm laughing. And I'm like, if I had a nickel for every time some woman came up and said that to me, I'd own this bar. And the people are like, well, why aren't you talking to her anymore? She says she loves black men. I'm like, one, how many black men has she said that to? She just gave me an open pass, basically. If I go in and say just 2 or 3 of the right things, we can be back at her place tonight. Now, okay, maybe it's self-aggrandizing, but I want to be unique. Again, you're looking as a human being, and it's that thing. And it's really, really weird because, you do become trained and sensitized to what you expose yourself to. And I don't know what the numbers are. Obviously, a lot of young men look at pornography, but I think as the years have gone on, I think that number is raising for young women too.
I believe so. And also
as well.
because access is so much.
Yeah. You can just get
It's-
up on your phone whenever.
It's equal opportunity access in a way it never has been
Yes.
across the globe.
And I think that's led to the performative epidemic and the expectations, because the things that they say when watching pornography, particularly interracial pornography, the things that are said about both people and a place that's, you're going to be aroused in some sort, so you're opening yourself up, your body, your physiology is opening up because you're aroused in this thing. You're watching this thing, really horrific, horrible shit is being said. You're kind of being programmed to, well, maybe that's okay.
Yeah, I saw it online.
I saw it online. I was getting off to it.
I have a friend who spent tens of thousands of dollars going through a Title IX process because her daughter was strangled by one of the first guys she ever dated. And I think a lot of what his defense was, or what he had said to her, when it came out in Title IX, that's a whole other conversation of the shit show that Title IX can be. But the guy had intimated or said, like, but on porn, like, this is normal. This is fine. Like, why would you not like this? She's like, I don't want to be. And that's another thing, like the language has changed. It's not choking because you choke on food, as advocates will say, as experts, like it's strangulation. It wasn't fatal. But yeah, this thing of like, yeah, well, I saw it on the internet and this is normal.
Saw it on porn. It was normal. I noticed something was weird because it was right around before the pandemic, the whole idea of choke me, spit on me, And again, if everybody is down and it's safe and healthy,
do what you're going to do. But that became to be the norm because I'm on social media looking at former high school students who are graduated in college post these type of memes. And so much that it seemed like every young woman was into this and young men were into this type of thing as well. And I'm like, that ain't the kind of sex I'm trying to have. Y'all are really wild with this. What are you getting into? And yeah, I would expect young people to be involved or to kind of fall in line with something like that. Yes, it's experimental. And again, you don't know what you don't know.
If it's consensual and if you can stop at any moment. Like the thing with actual kink and BDSM, like people will write up contracts. I actually went to at the Nashville BDSM space, the head of it was talking, he held a lecture on consent and what consent is. I was like, I want to hear because this is so far from my world. And first I heard the fight or flight kind of BS dichotomy is fight, flight, freeze, or freeze is what we should be saying. And some say, well, freeze or fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, because that's what happens a lot of times, right? If you're in an uncomfortable situation, especially if you then add layers to that of, well, I'm a woman and I said yes, and I should, now like,
Yeah.
If you can kind of take a page out of the BDSM playbook and the kink playbook of like, consent is taken very, very seriously. And the head of it, the guy who was holding the lecture was like, I will not do anything the same day that we have said yes. I want to give them 48 hours or 72 hours to change their mind because you get caught up in something. You're like, this is great. This sounds great. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
We all do it for anything. I mean, it could be you're shopping and you buy something in a store. Like, why
I didn't need those Reese's chocolate covered animal crackers, which are absolutely delicious. You don't need that. And I learned about that when I was bartending the FetLife events. I learned, funny thing is, like the guys who organized it didn't want me to be the bartender because they were like, no, he's going to take all the women. And I'm like, I'm here to make money. I'm not interested in any of that. But I got to learn, they come in by once or maybe twice a month and then they're talking to me and I'm like, so how does it work? You're polyamorous and break it down to me. Like they're breaking down that and the consent and the doms and the subs and whatnot.
Right.
And this was an interesting group because they had the most females who were doms out of any group out there. So that was a different dynamic that I was exposed to see, and I'm like, oh, but consent is a huge thing. And we were talking about that. It was like you can't just gauge it. You can't just guess for consent.
Right.
You have to ask. And there's certain ways. Because one of the questions you asked me, how did I learn in situations like making the first move type of thing? When I was younger, insecure, didn't necessarily know or have quote unquote game, I didn't really make moves at all. And then as I kind of learned, I got into situations where a lot of women would make the first move on me. I'm just hanging out. Yeah, I like her and stuff, but we're hanging out. We're spending time together. And suddenly she's like, why aren't you kissing me? Boom, and jumps my bones, so to speak. And I got to like that because I didn't have to question anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now sometimes that just led to both of us sitting there and she leaves frustrated, like, he didn't make a move. I can't believe he doesn't like me. And then maybe not talk to me again. And so there's opportunities missed. But I got to be like, well, if you choke my bones, I definitely know what you want to do and that you like me and stuff. But then I developed to, being able to talk about it. With romantic language, with romantic intent, you can breach the areas and conversation of consent and what people are in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be debased or lowbrow and crass.
And it can be humorous too.
And a turn on.
You don't always know. You're not always sure. And so check in. But if you feel a little hesitancy, step back. Let the other person make the first move. Well, I was talking to one of my students, a few of them were played basketball. If you've got a pickup game of basketball and you've like kind of badgered your friend into playing with you, that, doesn't really want to be there with you. And if he stops halfway through, are you going to penetrate him? You've got the adrenaline going. You've got all this, like, would you do? Like, no, you wouldn't do that. We would clearly know that you're violent. And that's the same thing. I was like, you just have to take that mentality and let someone else make the first move. If they're not, ask. Ask in a funny way. Ask in a way. Don't badger them. Don't expect it. Nobody's body belongs to you.
Yeah. And it's kind of recognizing and going through our lives. I was talking to friends in college. They're like, man, how many, particularly when Me Too became a thing, when Me Too, the movement really emerged, a lot of people started asking themselves questions. And they're like, man, back in college, I had a whole lot of drunk hookup sex. I was like, yeah, a lot of us did. A lot of people did engage in that. Again, it's not going through your life to say, I have never transgressed upon someone. I don't think necessarily any of us, maybe a 3-year-old can say that. but I've been around long-term subs for kindergartners. I've seen kindergartners transgress upon each other knowingly.
The question is, how are you going to react if one of those people calls you? Or me? Like, I'm not saying you, like, if one of those people calls us and says, you know, that time I really was saying no. I really didn't want to. Like, are you going to say, that's crazy? That's not, or are you going to listen?
Mm-hmm.
When I think about past boyfriends, I'm like, oh, okay. If I get a call and saying, maybe you were too pushy, you know, or you were too aggressive then, or I really didn't want to, it's like, I have to acknowledge.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
All of us have to.
That's what we have to do. And it's something else because it's, one of the questions you asked, like, what do I think sex is for?
No, what do you know? How do you define sex? I think.
Oh, how do I define sex? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think,
Intercourse, P and V, obviously, to bring more people about it. It's procreation, There's been talk like, do you think animals enjoy sex? I'm like, well, I think you would have to entice them to continue doing it. I think it's an enticement for us.
There are very few mammals on Earth who do it when they're not in heat. So probably not. We are among the few
that just keep doing it.
They can do it whenever because we have, as I keep saying, like we have far more recreational than procreative sex.
Yeah, that's it. That's the damn truth. It can be. I think it can, obviously we could bring more humans about, but also it is something that really can unlock our spirits and our consciousness. Should we do it? I think that's why, even in moments of my own history where I'm kind of having sex just to have sex, it feels good. It feels good, and that does something to the body. Now, if we came at it with, I don't want to use the word intention, I think that's overlooked, but if we came at it with a clarity as far as who we are and the person we are engaging with, it can do wonderful things. Knowing that the female regenerative power, that beautiful picture you have on the back, that regenerative power to have orgasm after orgasm after orgasm, something that helps bring life, that is a wonderful tool to work your physiology to be in exact alignment with whatever manifestations you want. And there's been plenty of times where I've had some of the most memorable sexual acts where I didn't penetrate the woman at all, except maybe with my fingers. My clothes were on.
Yeah.
And I remember one woman in specific, we were talking and going through a divorce, and the dad was being a deadbeat dad and all this stuff. And we're kind of making out, and my hands go down there, and she is orgasming and crying. That's also something that I've experienced before too. It's like crying. And the first time that happened to me, I'm thinking, something wrong, what's wrong? And she's like, no. And it was my sisters who really explained. They were like, sometimes that orgasm can release a whole bunch of stuff.
I've had men cry where it's like, again, the good crying.
Yeah.
Because of this opening up, because you are so connected in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is about the two people, but you're also connected to your own body in that moment.
It's wonderful. Kind of what I'm looking for is like a partner where we can go there constantly with each other at need, at whim, whenever, rather than kind of try to go out in the world and find it here or there or little places.
One thing I was thinking about when you're talking about racism and sexuality, like the hypersexualization of Black men used to justify horrors. Even here, the duality of like in the modern world, we think of men. We used to think of women, right? It used to be women were the uncontrollably sexual ones. And now we think of men, but the hypersexualization of Black and white men are very different.
Yeah.
The white hypersexualized man is boys will be boys. What can you do? The Black hypersexualized man is we need to punish him.
He's dangerous, but also enticing. And let's not just discount the horrific sexual assaults and just horrific things that happened to enslaved men during that time as well.
Yeah.
To be made examples of for whatever people's extremely sadistic and dementic pleasures were. Again, it goes back to that idea of, hold on, do you like me for who I am? Or are you on something else? Because the idea of, yes, oh my God, Black men are so hypersexualized. White girls, you need to look out. But if you're into it, find one.
Right.
And don't tell anybody, and we'll keep it a secret, or it's maybe a rite of passage for some people. It's similar to the hypersexualization of young girls. I remember I was watching, this is like late 90s. I was back home in Maryland, and I'm watching Nickelodeon, and I'm like, why are these little girls, they're 11 years old, why are they, I know they're doing their dances, but this is a little bit much. Pushing makeup and stuff, the hypersexualization I mean, the Blue Lagoon. You remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
The idea of the Lolita. It's almost as if every little pocket and corner that can be hypersexualized has, and definitely in a society that creates new pockets and corners simply to make money from and markets from. So not only do we have a moral conundrum when it comes to hypersexualization of all different types of people, you can't even, I don't necessarily think you can say that, yes, in society and in the white power structure that it is, it's giving white men an alibi, but there's plenty of white men who are victims as well of this shit.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not forget that. But in a society where it's like, let's commodify and make a marketplace out of this abuse, out of this taking advantage of people, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Again, I don't know what the solution is, but looking at it, yeah, and it's made it dangerous. But I know guys who, non-white men, who are proud of it, who would go out like, I'm going out to, for instance, let's say they'd be like, if they lived in Nashville, they would go to Nashville. They'd be like, because I could bag a whole bunch of white girls because they're gonna be down. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
It feel weird because like, is it my place to say that that's right or wrong? But when you can see some of the societal implications that lead people to believe and to feel those things, but it's really tricky. That part is really tricky. But that type of attitude has caused pain for people. That's caused deaths. That's caused horrific things to happen to people in their situations, in their societies and neighborhoods and communities. It can't necessarily be ignored. So it's the opening up of a very tricky, a very difficult conversation that most of us have some sort of attachment to it, to where it's very, 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 very deep, and how that type of abuse, consistent over the years, leads to just violence, not even just sexual violence, but violence straight up,
Right, because sexual violence, I always say, like, there's actually no such thing as sexual violence. It is violence through sex. It's still violence.
Yeah. And if we don't have indigenous cultures or other cultures that are much older than ours, we don't have an initiation process, particularly for young men. We don't have some sort of initiation process of becoming a man, understanding what that's like, understanding what your responsibilities.
But isn't life that initiation process? I mean, it used to be like taking a teenager to a prostitute.
Yeah.
Which would never happen with a woman. Like, nobody's taken young girls to like a male escort to say, like, now you're going to be a woman at the age of 15 or something. But I think the initiation is, it's having parents like yours who explain things to you, right? It's life, and hopefully having more positive than negative input and influences, and healthy.
Yes.
Sex positive, body positive, life positive, where you get to be surrounded by people who aren't obsessed with gender or melanin.
I just remember reading a book of Water and the Spirit, written by Malidoma Some. He's from Burkina Faso, and he was breaking down the initiation process that they take all of the young boys from the age range, I think, of 11 to 14 through. You're going to go away, and you're going to come back, and you're going to learn the duties and responsibilities of the man. And they do the same thing for the young women. That type of initiation process.
Yeah, I get that.
That is up on your parents. And the way we live, we don't live like that these days.
Even just separating girls and boys. What about taking them together and saying, this is what it's like to be a good person? Like, more than a good man or a good woman, right? This is the initiation. Or when you say initiation, it also makes me think of like purity balls, where they take 5-year-olds or 15-year-olds and put makeup on them to look like 25-year-olds. And then they pledge their virginity.
Yes. He's getting back to the hypersexualization, the idea of taking one's virginity.
Yeah.
Becomes a conquest. Yeah, we got a lot to work out, apparently. You've given me a lot to think about.
And likewise. I mean, I was like, I know we'll have a lot to talk about, but 2 hours in, it's like, I know we could go for another 5 hours.
Wow.
So when I get back down to Nashville, we're going out for coffee.
Definitely.
That's thought-provoking journalist, musician, and podcaster Khalil Ekulona. And yes, this conversation has continued for months now over epically long coffees, lunches, and dinners with friends. I thank him so much for joining me here and for his continued support of this project. You can find him on Instagram, and there's a link to his account and the transcript of this conversation on the Less Booty Call, More Ella Fitzgerald page at womenliksex.com/episodes. Women Like Sex is a flipped script production. It is executive produced and edited by me, Natasha Stojanovic. Website design and artwork is by Ted Nunes. Edesio Martinez is associate producer. Vic Vinayak assisted on mixing and editing. For more episodes and swag, or to subscribe to the podcast or Patreon, please visit womenlikesex.com, the Women Like Sex YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is Women Like Sex. Pass it on.